The lower decks of the Imperial flagship smelled like oil and burnt metal. Tai-Ho had grown used to it after 2 years. He had grown used to many things. The cold floors, the dim lights, the guards who looked at him like he was less than an animal. He had learned to keep his eyes down and his hands busy. Busy hands meant survival. Idle hands meant death. Tai-Ho worked in Workshop 12, a forgotten corner of the massive ship where broken machines came to die. The Valori did not care about this place. They sent their damaged equipment here and expected nothing. Most of the time, the machines stayed broken. The other slaves in the workshop had given up long ago. They moved slowly, ate their small meals and waited for death. But Tai-Ho was different. He could not stop his mind from working. Before the conquest, Tai-Ho had been an engineer on a starship called the Morning Star. He had spent 15 years fixing engines, rewiring systems, and solving problems that other engineers said were impossible. He loved his work. He loved the feeling of understanding how things fit together. When the Valori came to Earth, they destroyed everything Tai-Ho knew. His ship, his crew, his home. They put chains on his wrists and threw him into the belly of their flagship, but they could not chain his mind. The workshop was quiet that night. Most of the slaves were sleeping in their small rooms nearby. Tai-Ho sat alone at his workbench, cleaning tools that nobody else bothered to clean. He liked the silence. It helped him think. The door opened with a loud hiss, and two Valori guards walked in. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with skin the color of dark purple stone. Their eyes glowed faintly yellow in the dim light. Behind them, 4 slaves carried a large metal container. One guard pointed at an empty table. The slaves set the container down and quickly left. The guards looked at Tai-Ho with disgust. "New project," one guard said in broken human language. "Fix this. Important." They left without another word. Tai-Ho waited until their footsteps faded, then walked to the container. He opened it carefully and stopped breathing for a moment. Inside was the most beautiful armor he had ever seen. It was clearly ancient. The metal was a color Tai-Ho had never seen before, something between silver and gold that seemed to shift in the light. Strange symbols covered every surface, carved with impossible detail. The chest piece alone was a work of art. But the armor was damaged. Deep cracks ran through the shoulder plates. The power core in the center was dark and dead. Wires hung loose like torn veins. Tai-Ho could see that someone had tried to repair it before. Many times, actually. There were marks from different tools, patches that did not match, failed attempts to restart the power core. Whoever made these attempts had failed completely. Tai-Ho lifted the chest piece carefully. It was lighter than he expected. He turned it over in his hands, studying the cracks, the connections, the flow of the design. His engineer's mind began to wake up. This was a puzzle, a beautiful, complex puzzle. And Tai-Ho loved puzzles. He worked through the night. He forgot about sleep. He forgot about food. He forgot about the guards and the chains and the 2 years of suffering. There was only the armor and the problem and the solution hiding somewhere inside. The first thing he noticed was that the Valori did not understand their own technology. The armor was old, maybe thousands of years old. The Valori who built it were different from the Valori who ruled now. The new ones had forgotten the old ways. They tried to repair the armor using modern methods, but modern methods did not work. The armor needed something else. Tai-Ho thought about Earth. He thought about the ancient buildings his grandmother had shown him as a child. Stone temples that stood for thousands of years while modern buildings fell apart. The secret was not new technology. The secret was understanding the old ways and respecting them. He began to work with his hands instead of modern tools. He heated metal the old way, using fire and patience. He studied the symbols on the armor until he began to understand their pattern. They were not just decoration, they were instructions. A map showing how energy should flow through the armor. The previous repairs had blocked these pathways. The armor was choking on its own power. Tai-Ho removed every failed patch. He cleaned every channel. He found materials in the workshop's scrap pile that matched the armor's original metal closely enough. He worked with a focus he had not felt since Earth. Hours passed like minutes. By morning, the armor looked different. The cracks were gone, filled with careful repairs that followed the original design. The pathways were clear, but the power core was still dead. This was the hardest part. Taiho did not have Valori technology. He did not have proper tools. He had nothing but scraps and his own knowledge. He thought about the power systems he had worked on during his years as an engineer. Human power systems. They were simpler than Valori technology, but they followed the same basic rules. Energy wanted to flow. It needed a path and a spark. Taiho looked at the dead core and saw what was missing. The spark was gone. The original spark had died centuries ago. Taiho smiled for the first time in 2 years. He took a small battery from a broken cleaning robot. It was a tiny thing, barely enough to power a light, but it was enough to create a spark. He connected it to the core carefully, following the pathways he had cleared. He held his breath and pressed the activation switch. The core flickered. Once, twice. Then it glowed with a soft golden light, and the whole armor seemed to wake up. The symbols on the surface began to shine faintly. The metal hummed with quiet energy. It was alive again. Taiho sat back and looked at his work. He did not feel pride. He felt something simpler. He felt like himself again. For a few hours, he had not been a slave. He had been an engineer. The guards came back that afternoon. They looked at the armor and their yellow eyes went wide. They said nothing to Taiho. They simply took the armor and left quickly, almost running. Taiho returned to his workbench and began cleaning his tools. He did not expect to hear about the armor again. He was just a slave in Section 12. Nobody cared about slaves in Section 12. He was wrong. Far above, in the golden halls of the Imperial Palace, someone was about to care very much. Someone was about to ask a question that would change everything. And the answer to that question was a quiet man with grease-stained hands who had forgotten how to hope. Queen Valeth stood in the Chamber of Ancestors and felt the weight of 1,000 years pressing down on her. The chamber was the most sacred place on the flagship. Statues of ancient Valori rulers lined the walls, their stone eyes watching everything. In the center of the room, on a platform of black crystal, sat the armor of First Conquest. Her great-great-grandmother had worn this armor when the Valori Empire first rose to power. Every queen since then had worn it during the Rite of Dominion. Every queen except Valeth. The armor had been broken for 3 generations. The finest engineers in the Empire had tried to repair it. They had all failed. Valeth had accepted that she would be the first queen in history to perform the rite without the sacred armor. It was a shame that burned inside her chest, but she had learned to hide it. Queens did not show weakness. Now she stood frozen, staring at the armor that should have been broken. It was perfect. The cracks that had marked its surface for 100 years were gone. The dark power core that had refused to wake was now glowing with soft golden light. The symbols carved into the metal were shining faintly, just as the old text described. Valeth reached out with a trembling hand and touched the chess piece. It was warm. It was alive. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Behind her, Commander Rylok shifted uncomfortably. He was a tall Valori with scars on his face from many battles. He had served Valeth's mother and now served her. He was loyal, but he was also proud. He did not like mysteries he could not solve. "My queen," he said carefully, "the armor was sent to the lower workshops for storage. It seems someone there attempted repairs." "Attempted?" Valeth turned to face him. Her eyes were bright with something between joy and anger. "This is not an attempt. This is perfect. 3 generations of our finest minds could not do this." "Who did?" Rylok looked down. "We are investigating. The workshop supervisors claim they do not know. Then find out." The investigation took 2 days. Rylok questioned every supervisor, every guard, every officer in the chain of command. Nobody wanted to admit that they had not been paying attention. The armor had been sent to Workshop 12 for storage. It was supposed to sit there until the rite was over. Nobody had ordered repairs. Nobody had expected anything. Finally, a young guard admitted the truth. He had been on duty when the armor arrived at Workshop 12. He had told one of the slaves to fix it as a joke. He never expected anything to happen. The slaves in Section 12 were useless. Everyone knew that. Rylok brought the guard to Queen Valeth. The young Valori was shaking with fear. "Which slave?" Valeth asked. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were dangerous. "A human, my queen, from the conquered planet called Earth. His number is 7749. I do not know his name." Valeth had conquered Earth herself. 5 years ago. She remembered it as an easy victory. The humans had fought hard, but their weapons were weak and their ships were slow. She had cataloged them as a primitive species, useful only for simple labor. They were scattered across the empire now, doing the lowest work, cleaning, carrying, dying in the mines of distant moons. She had not thought about them since. "Bring him to me," she said. Rylak stepped forward quickly. "My queen, that is not wise. He is just a slave. Whatever happened with the armor, it must have been an accident. Perhaps he found instructions somewhere, or received help from—" "Bring him to me, Commander. Now." Rylak bowed and left. Valeth turned back to the armor and studied it again. She ran her fingers over the repairs. They were not Valori work. The technique was different. The approach was different. Whoever did this had not followed Valori methods. They had invented their own way. She thought about what she knew of humans. Small creatures, soft skin, short lives. They died so easily. Their planet had been unremarkable, a small blue world at the edge of explored space. The conquest had taken only 3 months. Veleth had considered it barely worth the effort. But someone from that small blue world had done something her entire empire could not do. The hours passed slowly. Valeth tried to focus on other matters. She had reports to review, decisions to make, a rite to prepare for. But her mind kept returning to the armor and the impossible repair. She had a strange feeling in her chest, something she had not felt in a long time. It took her a while to recognize it. Curiosity, real curiosity. Finally, Rylak returned. He looked troubled. "Well?" Valeth asked. "The human is being brought now, my queen. But there is something you should know. I spoke with the other slaves in his workshop. They say he works alone, mostly at night. He fixes things that other slaves cannot fix, things that Valori technicians have given up on. He has been doing this for 2 years. Valeth frowned. "Why was I not informed?" "Nobody noticed, my queen. He is just a slave. The things he fixed were small, unimportant, until now." "Unimportant." Valeth repeated the word slowly. "A slave has been solving problems for 2 years, problems that our own people could not solve, and nobody noticed because the problems were unimportant." Rylak said nothing. There was nothing to say. The door opened. 2 guards entered, holding a human between them. He was smaller than Valeth expected. His skin was a warm brown color, and his dark hair was cut short. His hands were rough and stained with grease. He wore the gray uniform of a slave, marked with the number SN749. His eyes met hers for just a moment before looking down at the floor. Valeth studied him carefully. He did not shake like the young guard had. He did not beg or cry. He simply stood there, quiet and calm, waiting for whatever would happen next. She had seen thousands of slaves over the years. Most of them had empty eyes, dead eyes, the eyes of creatures that had given up. This one was different. There was something behind his eyes, something still alive. "Leave us," Valeth said. Rylak started to protest. "My queen—" "Leave us, Commander. I wish to speak with this human alone." The guards and Rylak left. The door closed. Valeth and the human stood facing each other in the sacred chamber, surrounded by the statues of ancient queens. "What is your name?" Valeth asked. The human looked up. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "My name is Taiho." Valeth nodded slowly. She walked to the armor and stood beside it. "Tell me, Taiho, how did you repair this armor?" The human, who should have been nothing, looked at the armor, then back at the queen who ruled an empire, and he began to explain. Taiho looked at the armor he had repaired. It looked different here in this golden chamber, surrounded by statues and crystal and light. In his dark workshop, it had just been a puzzle. Here he could see it was something sacred, something important. He understood now why the guards had been so afraid. "I studied it first," he said simply, "for many hours. I did not touch it, I only looked." Queen Valeth tilted her head. The movement was strange to Taiho. Valori did not move like humans. Their bodies were harder, stiffer. When they moved, it was sudden and sharp. But this small tilt was almost gentle. "Go on," she said. "Your engineers tried to repair it using modern methods. I could see their work. They used new materials, new tools, new techniques." But the armor is old. It does not understand new things. It was built a different way. How do you know this? Tejo thought about his grandmother. She had been a historian before she died. She used to tell him stories about ancient Earth, about buildings that lasted thousands of years, while modern buildings fell apart in decades. She taught him that old did not mean stupid. Old often meant wise. On my planet, we have old things too, he said. Old buildings, old machines, old ways of doing things. I learned that you cannot force old things to accept new methods. You must learn their language first. Valeth was quiet for a long moment. Tejo could not read her expression. Valori faces were hard to understand. Their emotions did not show the same way human emotions did. The symbols on the armor, she said finally. What did you do with them? I followed them. They are not decoration. They are a map. They show how energy should flow through the armor. Your engineers blocked these pathways with their repairs. I removed the blocks and cleaned the channels. You read the ancient symbols? No, I do not know your language, but I understand patterns. The symbols repeat, they connect. Once I saw the pattern, I did not need to read the words. Valeth walked closer to him. She was much taller than Tejo, nearly 2 feet taller. He had to look up to meet her eyes. Most humans would have stepped back. Tejo did not move. The power core, she said. It was dead for 100 years. How did you wake it? It was not dead. It was sleeping. The energy was still there, deep inside. It just needed a spark to wake up. I gave it a spark. With what? You have no Valori technology. You have nothing. Tejo almost smiled. Almost. I had a battery from a broken cleaning robot. Very small, very weak, but enough to create a spark. Energy does not care where a spark comes from. It only needs a path to follow. Valeth stared at him. Tejo could see something changing in her eyes. She was looking at him differently now. Not like a slave, not like an animal, like a problem she could not solve. You use human technology to repair Valori sacred armor, she said slowly. I used what I had. And it worked. Yes. The queen turned away. She walked to one of the statues and stood before it, her back to Tejo. He watched her carefully. He did not know what would happen next. He might be killed for touching something sacred. He might be thrown back into his workshop and forgotten. He did not know which outcome was more likely. My advisors say your species is primitive, Valeth said without turning around. They say you are weak, slow, short-lived. They say conquering your planet was almost not worth the effort. Tejo said nothing. But you did something my finest engineers could not do. You did it with no tools, no training, no help. You did it with a broken robot battery in your hands. She turned to face him. Explain this to me. Tejo thought carefully before answering. He knew this moment was important. He knew his words might decide if he lived or died. But he also knew that lying would be useless. This queen was not stupid. She would see through any lie he told. My people are not strong, he said. Not like the Valori. We cannot run fast or see far or live long. Our planet tried to kill us many times. Ice ages, plagues, disasters. We should have died. Many species on our world did die. But we survived. How? We thought our way out. Every problem, we found a solution. When we could not fight predators, we made weapons. When we could not outrun the cold, we made fire and shelter. When our bodies failed, we made medicine. We are weak, yes, but we do not accept weakness. We change. We adapt. We solve. Valeth listened without interrupting. Her yellow eyes were fixed on his face. Other species grow stronger or faster over time, Tejo continued. We grew smarter, not smarter than everyone else, just smart enough to survive, and we never stop. Every generation, we learn more. We build more. We solve more. It is what we are. The chamber was silent. Tejo could hear his own heartbeat. You are saying, Valeth said slowly, that your species survives by solving problems. Yes. Any problem? We try. Sometimes we fail, but we always try. Valeth walked to the armor and touched it again. The golden light pulsed gently under her fingers. I have ruled this empire for 20 years, she said quietly. I have conquered 12 worlds. I have commanded millions of soldiers. I have never—" She stopped, started again. "I have never met anyone like you." "I am not special," Taiho said. "There are many humans like me. Engineers, scientists, builders, thinkers. You conquered all of us." The words hung in the air. Taiho saw something flicker across the queen's face. He could not name the emotion, but it looked almost like doubt. "You will not return to the lower workshops," Valeth said suddenly. Taiho felt a cold spike of fear. This was it. She would kill him now. He had seen too much, said too much. He closed his eyes and waited. "You will be moved to the upper decks. You will have a proper workshop, proper tools, proper materials." Taiho opened his eyes. "What?" "I have many things that are broken, Taiho. Things my engineers cannot fix. Things I was told could never be fixed. You will look at them. You will solve them. I am a slave. Yes, you are. But you are also something else now." Valeth looked at him with those strange yellow eyes. "You are interesting, and I have not found anything interesting in a very long time." She called for the guards. They entered and waited. "Take this human to quarters on level 8. See that he has food, rest, and clean clothes. Tomorrow bring him to the royal workshop." The guards looked confused, but they did not argue. They led Taiho out of the chamber. As he walked through the door, he looked back one last time. Queen Valeth was standing alone among the statues of her ancestors, staring at the armor he had repaired. He did not know what his future held. He did not know if he would live or die, succeed or fail. But he knew one thing with perfect certainty. Everything had just changed. Commander Rylock did not trust the human. He stood in the royal workshop and watched Taiho work on a broken navigation crystal. The human moved with quiet confidence, his small hands turning the crystal slowly, examining every surface. Rylock wanted to crush that confidence. He wanted to prove that the armor repair had been luck, nothing more. He had convinced the queen to test the slave. 3 impossible tasks, 3 chances to fail. The navigation crystal was the first test. It had guided Valori ships for centuries before it cracked during a battle. Engineers had tried to repair it for 10 years. They said the damage was too deep, the structure too complex. It could never work again. Taiho had asked for 3 days to study it. This was his second day. "You are wasting the queen's time," Rylock said. Taiho did not look up. "May I have silence, please? I need to think." Rylock felt his hands tighten into fists. No slave had ever spoken to him this way, but the queen had given orders. The human was not to be harmed until the tests were complete. So Rylock said nothing and continued to watch. On the 3rd day, Taiho asked for a strange list of materials: water, salt, a thin piece of copper wire, a small glass container. The guards brought everything, confused by the simple requests. Rylock expected some complex machine. Instead, Taiho built something that looked like a toy. "What is this?" Rylock demanded. "On my planet, we call it a battery," Taiho said. "Very simple, very old. Children learn to make them in school." He connected the copper wire to the cracked crystal and waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly the crack began to glow. The light spread through the crystal like water filling a glass. The crack did not disappear, but it sealed itself, the edges coming together like a healing wound. After an hour, the crystal pulsed with the same blue light it had shown centuries ago. Rylock stared. "That is impossible." "The crystal is not stone," Taiho explained calmly. "It is alive, a living structure that grows very slowly. It wanted to heal. It just needed energy. The right kind of energy, delivered the right way." "How did you know this?" Taiho shrugged. "I listened to it." News of the first test spread through the upper decks. Servants whispered. Officers exchanged worried looks. A human slave had done something impossible. Surely it was a trick. Surely the second test would reveal the truth. The second test was harder. A corrupted AI core, ancient and valuable, had been damaged during the conquest of a distant world. The Valori had killed its creators without learning how to maintain it. Now the AI screamed whenever anyone activated it, filling rooms with terrible sounds before shutting down. It had driven 3 engineers mad. Nobody would go near it anymore. Taiho sat with the core for 5 days. He did not try to activate it. He simply sat beside it, studying its design, reading the symbols carved into its casing. On the sixth day, he asked for something unexpected. He asked for music. Music? Rylock laughed harshly. For a broken machine? The AI is not broken, Taiho said. It is frightened. It woke up in a strange place surrounded by strange people. It does not understand what happened. It screams because it is scared and alone. It is a machine. It is a mind. Minds need comfort. The guards brought a small device that could play sounds. Taiho found a recording of soft, gentle tones, something that rose and fell like breathing. He placed it beside the core and activated both at the same time. The AI began to scream, but Taiho did not run. He sat perfectly still, letting the music play. The scream wavered, shifted. Slowly, over many hours, it changed into something else. Something like crying, then something like sighing, then silence. When the AI finally spoke, its voice was quiet and confused. "Where am I?" it asked. "You are safe," Taiho said. "You are not alone anymore." The AI did not scream again. It answered questions. It performed calculations. It worked perfectly. When the engineers came to study it, they found nothing wrong. The damage had been fear, not destruction. And the cure had been kindness. Rylak watched the second test with growing unease. This was not luck. This was not a trick. This human was seeing things that Valori eyes could not see. The third test was meant to be the end. A failing reactor in the ship's lower levels had become unstable. Engineers said it would explode within a month. The only solution was to eject it into space and lose power to half the ship. It was an acceptable loss. Nobody expected any other outcome. Taiho spent only 2 days examining the reactor. Then he asked for a meeting with the engineering team. "The reactor is not failing," he told them. "It is working too well." The chief engineer, an old Valori with gray skin and tired eyes, shook his head. "Explain." "When this reactor was built, the Empire was smaller. The power needs were smaller. Over the centuries, you have added more and more systems, more weapons, more shields, more lights. The reactor is trying to power everything, but it cannot. It is exhausted. What do you suggest? Turn things off." The room went silent. Rylak stepped forward angrily. "You want us to weaken our defenses? Lower our capabilities? Are you a spy?" Taiho remained calm. "I want you to make choices. You cannot have everything at full power all the time. You must decide what is important and what is not. Reduce the load on the reactor, and it will stabilize. Continue as you are, and it will explode." The Queen had been watching through a screen in her chambers. She sent her decision immediately. Follow the human's advice. The engineering team spent a day adjusting power distribution, shutting down unnecessary systems, and reducing the load on the reactor. Within hours, the reactor's dangerous readings began to fall. Within a week, it was running smoothly for the first time in decades. 3 tests, 3 impossible problems, 3 solutions. Rylak stood before the Queen in her private chamber, struggling to contain his frustration. "He is dangerous," Rylak said. "He makes us look like fools. The court is talking. They are saying that a slave is smarter than our engineers." "Perhaps he is," Vela said quietly. "My queen. The truth is not an insult, Commander. It is simply the truth." Valeth looked out the window at the stars. "For years I have believed that the Valori Empire was the greatest power in the galaxy. We conquered world after world. We defeated every enemy. But now I wonder. Wonder what? What else have we missed? What other problems have we accepted as impossible simply because we could not solve them?" She turned to face Rylak. "And how many more humans like Taiho are there?" Rylak had no answer. Far below in the servant quarters, a woman named Ji-Yun was listening to whispers. She had heard about the human engineer who had impressed the Queen. She had heard about the impossible repairs, the tests, the solutions. Ji-Yun had been a biologist before the conquest. She had studied life itself, the complex systems that made living things work. For 2 years, she had washed dishes and scrubbed floors and tried to forget who she used to be. Now, for the first time since Earth fell, she began to remember, and she began to plan. Queen Valeth could not sleep. She stood alone in her private chambers, looking out at the endless stars. The flagship moved silently through space, carrying thousands of Velori and hundreds of slaves toward destinations she had chosen. She had always felt powerful standing here. Tonight she felt something else, something that had been growing inside her since she met the human engineer. She felt afraid, not of Tai-Ho. He was just one man, small and soft and mortal. She could have him killed with a single word. What frightened her was what he represented, a truth she had been avoiding for weeks, a truth that now demanded to be faced. She called for him in the middle of the night. Tai-Ho arrived looking tired but alert. He had learned to keep unusual hours since coming to the upper decks. The Queen's requests came at strange times, and he had stopped trying to predict them. He stood before her in the simple clothes she had provided, his hands clean for once, his eyes calm. "Sit," Valeth said, pointing to a chair near the window. Tai-Ho sat. He did not speak. He had learned that the Queen would talk when she was ready. "I have been thinking about your people," she said finally, "about humans, about Earth." "Yes?" "When we conquered your world, our analysts wrote a report. They described your species as primitive, weak, barely worth cataloging. They recommended using you for simple labor only. No technical work, no positions of importance. They said you were inferior." Tai-Ho remained silent. "I read that report," Valeth continued. "I approved it. I signed the orders that scattered your people across my empire. I thought nothing of it. Humans were beneath notice." She turned to face him. "Was I wrong?" It was a dangerous question. Tai-Ho understood that. A queen was asking if she had made a mistake. The wrong answer could mean death. But Tai-Ho had stopped caring about death months ago. He cared only about truth. "Yes," he said simply. "You were wrong." Valeth's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "You measured us by the wrong standards. You saw that our ships were slower than yours. Our weapons were weaker. Our bodies were fragile. You concluded that we were inferior. But speed and strength and durability are not the only measures of a species. What else is there?" Tai-Ho leaned forward slightly. "On Earth, there is a creature called the tortoise. It moves very slowly. It cannot fight. It cannot run. By every measure you would use, it is inferior. But the tortoise has survived for 200 million years. Longer than almost any other creature. It survives because it is patient. It is careful, it adapts. It does not need to be fast or strong. It needs only to keep going." Valeth listened without interrupting. "Humans are like the tortoise," Tai-Ho continued. "We are not the fastest or the strongest or the longest lived. But we are still here. We have survived everything our planet threw at us. Ice ages that covered the world. Plagues that killed millions. Disasters that should have ended us. We survived because we are stubborn. We refuse to give up. And we are very, very good at solving problems. Your problem solving could not stop our invasion. No, but our planet is young. We have been a technological species for only a few thousand years. You have had millions of years. Give us time." The words hung in the air. Valeth understood what he was not saying. Given time, humanity could become a threat. "Not today, not tomorrow, but someday." "Tell me about your history," she said. "The real history, not what our analysts recorded." So Tai-Ho told her. He told her about wars that killed millions, fought over ideas and territories and resources. He told her about empires that rose and fell, each one learning from the failures of the last. He told her about scientists who unlocked the secrets of the atom, artists who captured the soul of a species in paint and stone and music, explorers who crossed oceans and climbed mountains because they wanted to know what was on the other side. He told her about the dark parts too: slavery, genocide, cruelty that made the Velori conquest look gentle by comparison. Humans had done terrible things to each other. They had capacity for great evil. But also great good, Tai-Ho said. The same creativity that made weapons also made medicine. The same stubbornness that fought wars also rebuilt cities. We are not simple creatures. We are complicated, messy, contradictory, but we are not inferior. Valeth sat in silence for a long time after he finished. The stars turned slowly outside the window. "I have ruled for 20 years," she said finally. I inherited an empire that was already great and made it greater. We conquered world after world because we believed we were the strongest, the best, the most advanced. She paused. But what if we are not? Tejo waited. What if we have been winning simply because we started earlier? What if other species, given time, could equal us, surpass us? She looked at him directly. What if we captured a sleeping giant and put it to work in our own home? Then you have a choice, Tejo said quietly. You can try to kill the giant before it wakes, or you can make friends with it. Can giants be friends with queens? I do not know, but I know that trying to kill a giant rarely ends well. Valeth almost smiled. It was strange seeing that expression on her alien face. Strange and somehow human. You are not afraid of me, she said. Why? I was afraid at first. When I lived in the lower workshops, I was afraid every day. But fear takes energy. It wears you down. I decided to spend my energy on other things. What things? Thinking, learning, understanding. I cannot change what happened to my people. I cannot undo the conquest. But I can still use my mind. I can still solve problems. I can still be myself. He met her eyes steadily. You can take my freedom, my home, my people, but you cannot take my mind. That belongs to me. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. It was a quiet sound, almost gentle. My advisors think you are dangerous, she said. Commander Rylock wants you dead. He says you make the Empire look weak. And what do you think? Valeth walked to the window and stood looking out at the stars. I think I have made a terrible mistake. Not in bringing you here, in everything that came before. She turned to face him. I think I have been a fool. I thought I was conquering primitives. Instead, I have filled my empire with minds that could destroy us. And I have treated those minds as nothing but machines for simple labor. What will you do? The queen was quiet for a long time. I do not know yet, she said finally, but I know I cannot continue as before. Something must change. Everything must change. She looked at him with those strange yellow eyes. Will you help me understand? Help you? You have shown me what humans can do. Now show me what they could be. Help me see what I have been blind to. Taiho thought of Ji-Yon in the kitchens, Dowan in the maintenance tunnels, Yunji in the medical bay. All the humans scattered across the ship, waiting, surviving, hoping. He thought of Earth, far away, still occupied by Valori forces. I will help you understand, he said carefully, but understanding is only the beginning. Eventually, you will have to act. I know, Valeth said quietly, and that is what frightens me most. Outside the window, the stars continued their endless dance. Two species, ancient enemies, stood on the edge of something neither could fully see. The future was uncertain. The path was unclear. But for the first time in 5 years, Taiho allowed himself to feel something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The revolution did not begin with weapons or fire. It began with whispers. Jian had spent months building a network. She moved carefully, always smiling, always bowing, always playing the part of the obedient slave. But beneath that mask, her mind was working. She remembered faces. She tracked schedules. She mapped the ship in her head, learning which corridors were watched and which were forgotten. She found the other scientist first, a physicist named Do Wan, who had once designed starship engines. He was cleaning waste systems now, but his hands still remembered how to build. A chemist named Yunji, who could make medicine from kitchen scraps. Her knowledge had saved 3 lives in the servant quarters already, using nothing but herbs and common supplies. A mathematician named Sunwoo, who spent his nights calculating things the Valori could not imagine. What are we waiting for? Do-Wan asked during one of their secret meetings in a storage room. We have enough people now. We could fight. Ji-Yeon shook her head. Fight how? With what? We have no weapons, no ships, no way to escape. If we attack them openly, we die, all of us. Then what do you suggest? Ji-Yeon smiled. It was not a happy smile. We make ourselves necessary. The plan was simple. Humans would stop hiding their abilities. Instead of pretending to be stupid and useless, they would show what they could really do. Not suddenly, not dangerously, but slowly and carefully. They would solve problems the Valori could not solve. They would fix things the Valori could not fix. They would become so valuable that removing them would cripple the ship. And then, Unji asked, then we negotiate. The plan spread through the human population like water through roots. Kitchen workers began improving recipes, making food taste better than anything the Valori cooks had ever produced. Cleaners started fixing small machines they found during their work, leaving them working better than before. Engineers in the lower decks began optimizing systems, making engines run smoother and use less energy. The changes were small at first. A cooking machine that suddenly worked perfectly, a ventilation system that stopped making noise, a navigation computer that gave faster results. The Valori noticed but did not understand. They assumed their own maintenance teams had finally done something right. Then the changes became bigger. Dewan mapped the flagship's entire power grid in his head. He found 17 inefficiencies that the Valori engineers had never noticed. He fixed them one by one, always making it look like an accident. The ship's power output increased by 12%. When the Valori investigated, they found nothing but happy mysteries. Yunji created new medicines using only materials from the kitchen and cleaning supplies. When a plague swept through the servant quarters, she cured it in days. The same plague had killed 3,000 Valori on another ship just months before. The doctors had no cure. Yunji never told them she had found one using herbs and basic chemistry. Sunwoo calculated attack patterns for the ship's defense systems. He left his calculations where a Valori officer would find them, making it look like an old document from the Empire's own archives. The officer used the patterns and won 3 battles that should have been losses. He was promoted. He never knew a human slave had made him a hero. Months passed. The humans became woven into the fabric of the ship. They were everywhere now, doing everything. The kitchen could not function without them. The engines could not function without them. The medical bay could not function without them. Slowly, quietly, impossibly, slaves had become masters of the ship's survival. Commander Rylock saw what was happening. He watched the reports and noticed the pattern. Every improvement traced back to a human. Every mystery solved led to human hands. He went to Queen Valeth with his warnings. They are taking over, he said, his voice tight with anger. Not with weapons, with usefulness. They are making themselves essential. Valeth listened without expression. I know. You know. And you do nothing? What would you have me do, Commander? Kill them all? She gestured toward the window toward the stars. The ship runs better than it has in a century. Our engines are more efficient. Our food is better. Our systems are optimized. Would you throw all that away because you are afraid? They are slaves. They should act like slaves. They are people. They are acting like people who want to survive. Rylock stared at her. You admire them. I understand them. There is a difference. Valeth turned to face him directly. When we conquered Earth, we thought we were capturing animals. We were wrong. We captured minds. Brilliant, adaptable, stubborn minds. And now those minds are showing us what they can do. This cannot continue. Eventually, they will want more than usefulness. They will want freedom. Yes, Valeth said quietly. They will. Below in the servant quarters, Jion received a message from Taiho. He wanted to meet. She went to his workshop on the upper decks, moving through corridors that she had mapped in her mind, avoiding guards whose schedules she had memorized. Taiho looked different than she remembered from the stories, smaller than she expected. Calmer. His workshop was filled with half-finished projects, pieces of broken technology waiting to be healed by his hands. You have been busy, he said. So have you. They looked at each other, 2 humans standing in the heart of an alien empire, surrounded by enemies armed with nothing but their minds. The Queen knows, Taiho said, about what your people are doing. She has known for weeks. Jion felt a flash of fear. Will she stop us? No, she is watching, waiting. I think she is trying to decide something. Decide what? What kind of queen she wants to be. Taiho walked to his workbench and picked up a small device, turning it over in his hands. She could destroy us. She has the power. One order, and every human on this ship dies. But she does not give the order. Day after day, she watches and waits. That is not comfort. That is torture. No, That is opportunity. He looked at her directly. We are not ready to fight. We may never be ready to fight, but we can be ready to talk. When she makes her decision, we need to be ready with our answer. What answer? Partnership, not slavery, not war. Something new. Something neither species has tried before. Jian thought about his words. She thought about the humans scattered across the ship, all of them working, all of them waiting, all of them hoping for something better than chains. Can it work? She asked. I do not know, but I know that the alternative is death for all of us. Tai-Ho set down the device and met her eyes. We have one chance, one moment when everything changes. We must not waste it. Far above, Queen Valeth sat alone in her chambers. On her desk lay two orders. One would send soldiers to kill every human on the ship. The other would call Tai-Ho to her throne room for a public meeting. Both orders were signed. Both were sealed. She had to choose. She picked up one of the orders and held it over a flame until it burned to ash. Then she summoned her guards. Bring me the human, she said. It is time. The throne room was full when Tai-Ho arrived. Every high-ranking Vellery on the ship had gathered. Commanders, advisors, nobles, scientists. They stood in ordered rows, their purple skin and yellow eyes catching the light from 1,000 floating crystals. At the far end of the room, on a throne of black metal, sat Queen Valeth. She wore the armor of First Conquest, the same armor Tai-Ho had repaired months ago. It gleamed with golden light, perfect and ancient and alive. The crowd parted as Tai-Ho walked forward. He heard whispers, saw hateful stares, felt the weight of alien contempt pressing against him from all sides. Commander Rylock stood near the throne, his hand resting on his weapon, his eyes burning with barely contained rage. Tai-Ho stopped before the steps that led to the throne and waited. He did not bow. He did not kneel. He simply stood, one small human facing an empire. Tai-Ho of Earth, Valeth said, her voice filling the room. You stand before the throne of the Valori Empire. Do you understand why you are here? I believe I do, my queen. Then speak. Tell this court what you wish to say. Tai-Ho took a breath. This was the moment. Everything he had worked for, everything his people had built, came down to the next few minutes. He thought of Ji-Yon, watching through the servant doors. He thought of Do-Hwan and Eunji and Sunwoo and all the others who were listening, waiting, hoping. 5 years ago, he began, your empire conquered my world. You came with ships and weapons we could not match. You killed millions of my people. You scattered the survivors across your territory to serve as slaves. You believed you had won. You believed humans were nothing but animals to be used and discarded. The crowd stirred angrily. Rylock's hand tightened on his weapon. You were wrong, Tai-Ho continued. Not because we are stronger than you. We are not. Not because we are smarter. That is not true either. You were wrong because you did not understand what humans are. We are survivors. We are adapters. We are problem solvers. You gave us the lowest work, the most hopeless tasks, and we found ways to excel. You ignored us, and we became essential. You tried to break us, and we became stronger. He turned slowly, looking at the faces of the Valori around him. Most showed hatred. Some showed fear. A few, just a few, showed something else. Curiosity, interest, the beginning of understanding. Right now on this ship, human hands keep your engines running. Human minds improve your systems. Human knowledge saves your lives. You could kill us all. That is your power. But if you do, your ship will fail. Your fleet will weaken. Your empire will suffer. He turned back to face the queen. We are not your enemies. We never were. We are something far more valuable. We are your partners. The throne room exploded with angry voices. Officers shouted accusations. Nobles demanded punishment. Rylock stepped forward, drawing his weapon. Enough! Valeth's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The room fell silent instantly. She stood, the golden armor glowing around her, and walked slowly down the steps until she stood face to face with Tai-Ho. You ask for partnership, she said quietly, so only he could hear. Not freedom, not revenge. Partnership. Freedom comes with partnership. Revenge is a luxury we cannot afford. What I ask for is a future, for my people and for yours. And what do you offer in return? Everything. Our minds, our skills, our loyalty, if you earn it. We will help the Valori Empire become something greater than it has ever been. Not through conquest, through cooperation. Valeth studied his face for a long moment. Then she turned to face her court. For 1,000 years, the Valori have ruled through strength alone. We believe that power came from weapons and warships, from conquered worlds and enslaved populations. We were fools. She paused, letting the words sink in. True power comes from knowledge, from innovation, from the ability to solve problems that others cannot solve. And in these areas, the humans have proven themselves our equals, perhaps our superiors. The court murmured in shock. Rylok looked as though he might collapse. Today, I declare a new policy for the Valori Empire, Valeth continued. Humans are no longer slaves. They are no longer property. From this moment forward, they are partners in the Empire. They will have rights. They will have freedom to work as they choose. They will be respected for their contributions. She turned to Taiho. What else do you require? Taiho felt his heart beating fast, but his voice remained steady. Earth must be freed. Our people must be allowed to return home if they wish. Those who stay must be treated as citizens, not servants. And if I grant this, then you will have the loyalty of a species that has never stopped fighting. We will help you build, create, discover. We will solve your impossible problems and teach you new ways of thinking. The Valori Empire will become something the galaxy has never seen before. Valeth was silent for a long moment. The entire court held its breath. Done, she said finally. Earth will be freed. Your people will be given choice. Those who stay will be citizens of the Empire. She extended her hand palm up in the Valori gesture of agreement. Do we have an accord? Taiho placed his hand on hers. Human skin against Valori. Two species touching as equals for the first time. We have an accord. The court watched in stunned silence as their queen made peace with a former slave. Some faces showed anger that would never fade. Others showed confusion that might someday become acceptance. But some, just some, showed the first light of understanding. As Taiho walked out of the throne room, Rylok blocked his path. The commander's face was twisted with hatred. This is not over, Rylok hissed. The queen has shown weakness. Others will see it. The Empire will never accept this. Taiho looked up at the tall Valori without fear. You are right. This is not over. This is just the beginning. Change is coming, Commander. Whether you accept it or not. You can fight it and be crushed, or you can adapt and survive. He smiled slightly. That is what humans do. Perhaps the Valori can learn. He walked past the frozen commander and through the doors where Jion was waiting. It worked, she breathed. It actually worked. The hard part is just beginning, Taiho said. We have promises. Now we must build a new world. Behind them, Queen Valeth stood alone in her throne room. Her court had departed, full of questions and fears and hopes she could not answer. She looked at the armor she wore, the ancient armor that a human slave had brought back to life. Commander Rylok appeared at her side. You have doomed us, my queen. History will remember this day as the beginning of our fall. Valeth turned to face the stars through the great window. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue world that had produced the most stubborn species she had ever encountered. She had tried to cage them. Now she would walk beside them. No, Commander, she said quietly. History will remember this as the day we stopped being conquerors and started being builders. We tried to crush them. We tried to use them. We failed. They won, not with weapons, but with their minds. And that does not frighten you? Valeth thought of Taiho, the quiet man with grease-stained hands who had refused to be broken. She thought of all the humans on her ship, working and waiting and hoping. She thought of the future they might build together. It terrifies me, she admitted, but fear is no excuse for blindness. We made an error. Now we make it right. She looked at Rylok with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Learn to adapt, Commander, or be left behind. She walked away, leaving him alone with his hatred and his fear. Outside the ship, the stars continued their endless dance. Two species, ancient enemies, had taken the first step towards something new. The path ahead was uncertain. The future was unwritten. But for the first time in 5 years, on a ship full of enemies becoming allies, hope had been reborn. And somewhere in the lower decks, where the journey had begun, an empty workshop waited. The tools were clean, the lights were dim, but the door was open. It would always be open now.